man, you know what would suck even more than becoming permanently blind as a child? If you had to fucking flee Paris because the Nazis are taking over. That's right, bitch. No more croissants for you. The only pastry we're eating is depression. So I usually don't make separate review videos about books unless I have a lot of things to say about them. For this particular book, I have a lot of feelings to discuss. So let's talk about All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a historical fictional novel about a blind French girl and a German soldier who meet during World War II. You want to know why we cannot see all the light? It's because we're too busy fucking crying over this book. That's it. That's the whole review. Thank you for watching. Bye. Just kidding. Well, not really. I did cry a lot while reading this book. I want to talk about why I cried so much reading it. It's not just because I'm a weak bitch. It's also because this story is genuinely very good. And I just want to talk a little bit more about the reasons why. One of the reasons why I enjoyed this book is because I really cared for the characters. They are so soft, so sweet, such pure cinnamon rolls that need to be protected at all costs. I just want them to be fucking happy, okay? The main girl lives in France with her dad, who works as a locksmith in the National Museum in Paris, and he raises her to be such a smart kid. Like, there's this jewel at this museum where there are rumors surrounding it that say that if you possess the jewel, then everyone in your life will die. So all the kids at the museum are like, holy shit, this is fucking nuts. But the main girl's just like, nah, this sounds like bullshit to me. When she is 6 years old, she becomes blind, and her dad is seriously goals because he encourages her to still keep on learning and engaging with the world even without her eyesight. So he'll give her these giant books that are in Braille. He'll make these puzzle boxes for her to solve. And he even makes a miniature replica of the city so that she can learn where the streets are, even if it's just through touch. So they'll be walking down the street and then he'll just stop her and spin her around 3 times and be like, all right, show me the way back home. And she's like, but Papa, I can't. And he's like, doesn't matter, bitch. You're gonna learn today. So basically, the dad is awesome. The girl is really fucking smart. They are a wonderful, wholesome family. Everything is pretty chill. But then life is like, man, you know what would suck even more than becoming permanently blind as a child? If you had to fucking flee Paris because the Nazis are taking over. That's right, bitch. No more croissants for you. The only pastry we're eating is depression. So that's the main girl's story. The main guy is a boy who is about 2 years older than her. He lives in Germany. He is an orphan who lives with his sister. And they are both also really fucking smart. He starts building and deconstructing these radio pieces, and they start hearing news from other parts of the world. And so that's how they become a bit more enlightened as opposed to other kids in their neighborhood who are just fed propaganda. But this kid is like a natural engineer. He is so good at just putting these pieces together and figuring out how they work together. He also has a journal where he just writes down a whole bunch of random questions like, why do cats have whiskers? Where does light come from? Why do butterflies have wings? I don't know, just like random shit like that. The point is, he's a soft boy, the softest of all the boys. And because he is so smart, he gets enlisted into a Hitler Youth Academy. So now he is a soft boy Nazi. Yeah, I can't believe I am now sympathetic of a Nazi, but here we are. So listen, a lot of times when people try to make Nazis sympathetic through writing or any types of media, it ain't a good look because it makes racism seem acceptable and it seems like you're justifying these abhorrent actions, and it can be quite problematic. But Anthony Doerr does a really good job of making you really feel for this character, but also at the same time understanding that this kind of culture is deplorable. And I think he does it well because you're following this kid from when he was super young, before he even ended up in this situation. He was just a kid who had all these wonderful curiosities about the world. He had all these dreams about becoming an engineer, but he was born in a time and in a country where there is so much propaganda and nationalism. And as an orphan, his opportunities were literally limited to him working in a minefield where he would probably die just like his dad did, or having a little bit more of a chance at a better life by joining an elite academy with a scholarship. So I understand where he's coming from, even though it's such a horrible culture. And he ended up there not because he is a hateful person, but because of his circumstances that you learn as you watch him grow up. And that's not to say that all Nazi boys are sympathetic and didn't have a choice, because so many of the other boys in his neighborhood and his class were very, very hateful and racist and total douche nuggets. And the academy that he was in was clearly an environment of toxic masculinity. But this boy in particular is a soft-spoken kid who is just trying to survive. And he is often ridden with guilt and cowardice and confusion on whether he is doing the right thing. And his sister literally calls him out and says, so you're just gonna do what everybody else is doing and you think that's right? And you know from the radio that we've secretly been listening to from other countries that our country ain't that fucking great. It's a morally gray situation. Well, not morally gray because, you know, you shouldn't fucking be part of a genocide, but it's a complicated situation. And I think it's understandable, and I think his character was done really well. Besides the main characters, the side characters are also really great. The dad, like I mentioned before, is awesome. He's so sweet and so loving and so kind, but even the other caretakers that the main girl has throughout the story are great people too. Usually parental roles or caretaker roles are pretty forgettable because they're just there to fulfill that kind of role for the main character, so they're usually devoid of personality, but I actually found these characters to have really enhanced her life with a lot of love and kindness during such a difficult time in her life, and I really liked them as people. My favorite side character was this one caretaker that she had, who was the 70-year-old lady, and you would expect her to be a boring character, but she surprisingly turned out to be a badass bitch. I was delightfully surprised to see how she contributed to the plot and to the intrigue. She was literally rounding up all her girlfriends and was like, you know what? Fuck the Germans. Hail Hitler, more like Hail Shitler, am I right, ladies? She was like, let's get this bread. Literally, let's get this bread and put secret numbers inside the bread. That's the kind of bread that we're gonna get, because the only pastry we're eating is treason. There's another side character who is the main guy's friend at the academy, and he is also a soft boy. He's a total nerd about bird watching. His head is always in the clouds. He doesn't subscribe to toxic masculinity, so obviously all the other boys are beating the shit out of him. There's this one part where the main guy is like, man, you know, it doesn't have to be like this. I could be an engineer and live in Berlin. You could be a professional bird watcher and travel the world. We don't have to do this. And the other guy's like, dude, you only think this way because you think that we still have control over our lives. And it was at this point where I was like, damn, you ain't just a soft boy, you a sad boy too. So yeah, great characters. I just wanted to ramble a bit about all the characters I liked because I found them to be very endearing and very real. But besides that, another really strong part about the book is the writing. A lot of critics have given praise to Anthony Doerr's writing style, and now that I've read the book, I really fucking see it. The way that he puts together sentences is so beautiful and rich and just fucking smooth like butter. It's just so naturally done without veering towards purple prose. It's so poetic in a way that adds to the atmosphere and the sentiment of the story without bogging you down with unnecessary descriptions. And in particular, I really enjoyed the description that he wrote from the perspective of the blind girl, because so much of writing is describing what something looks like, and he is able to get around this because you really get to envision what Paris is like just from reading about what she's hearing or what she's touching through the little miniature that her father made. Even when he describes sight from her perspective is really beautiful too. Let me just read to you guys an example of what I mean. She has no memories of her mother, but imagines her as white, as soundless brilliance. Her father radiates 1,000 colors: strawberry red, deep russet, wild green, a smell like oil and metal, the feel of a locked tumbler sliding home, the sound of his key rings chiming as he walks. He is an olive green when he talks to a department head, an escalating series of oranges when he speaks to Mademoiselle Fleury from the greenhouses, a bright red when he tries to cook. He glows sapphire when he sits over his workbench in the evenings. humming almost inaudibly as he works, the tip of his cigarette gleaming a prismatic blue. I also love the writing from when the main guy sees the main girl because it is just so tender and so soft, and it fucking makes me feel things. The way her fingers flutter through the space around her, each a thing he hopes never to forget. Her voice like a bright, clear window of sky. Her face a field of freckles. He thinks, I don't want to let you go. So yeah, the writing is some good shit and it makes me feel things, and that's that. The main reason why I rated this book 5 stars though is because the last 100 pages made me cry like a little bitch. I read this book on the plane. Silent tears were rolling down my cheeks, but I just could not stop. The flight attendant would come over and be like, you want some lemon juice? And I'd be like, no bitch, I want to fucking lie down and die. Like, I went to the bathroom to blow my nose and my eyes were just so puffy and red. And I haven't cried like this over a book since Crooked Kingdom, so that says something. I think by the time I got to the ending, it really put together all the themes and the messages throughout the book for me, and I was just so deeply touched by their journey. It wasn't just the sad parts that made me cry. I mean, they definitely did. The fact that they were in such shitty situations, they were still so curious about the wonders of the world. They were still so inquisitive and bright and thoughtful, even though the war has robbed so much of what a normal childhood is supposed to be like. If you've read this book, you know that one part where you get to read the journal that the main guy is keeping, where he like writes a book of questions about nature and all this random shit. That part made me fucking cry. He's just such a fucking nerd. But he'll never know these answers because he doesn't have Google. Even the thought of enjoying simple pleasures is so heart-wrenching. Like going outside, having a nice meal, even going to the fucking grocery store. These are all things that we take for granted, but the characters want it so badly. And so he can hold her fingers in his palms and lead her out into the sunshine. He would walk anywhere to make it happen, bear anything. In a year or 3 years or 10, France and Germany would not mean what they meant now. They could leave the house and walk to a tourist restaurant and order a simple meal together and eat it in silence, the comfortable kind of silence lovers are supposed to share. Fuck! God damn it. Anyway, the only caveat that I have is that the book is very, very slow. So the author has a slice of life approach where you're literally following the characters' life stories from childhood to adulthood. So time is really crawling, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand, it really paints a picture of their lives and it makes them feel real. But on the other hand, I feel like most of the action happens every other 100 pages. I was bored a few times reading the middle parts of the book, and that's why I almost rated this book 4 stars until the ending sucker punched me in the face. I do think it's beautiful in an atmospheric kind of way, but I think my personal preference is that I just want a little bit more action. Another caveat that I had is that we don't really get to see much interaction between the main characters, which I know isn't the point, because the whole point is that you're following their different life stories. But maybe I was just misled by the synopsis, but I really wanted the book to focus more on their relationship. I think it would have made the book way more intriguing and addicting to read. I definitely would have cried way more if they had explored that, but I really do think it would have enhanced the themes of the story, because in the few times that you did get to see them interact, they just connected together so fucking well. Their souls are so similar to each other, even though they come from different circumstances, that I loved reading any scene that had them, and I cried every time there was a scene between them, and I just wish there was more of it. That's all I want. I just want more of it. Anyway, in conclusion, this book is tragically beautiful. I would recommend if you don't mind reading slow atmospheric stories. I usually don't read historical fiction either, and I especially don't read any war stories because that shit really can bog you down, but I felt like it was worth it. This was some good shit. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my review. If you have read this book, let me know so we can cry about it together. I want these children to be protected at all costs. That's really what I have to say about this book. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.